Hi, everyone. Happy Saturday. We have an incredible doctor, an interventional cardiologist from Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi, and he is going to be answering your questions. So get those questions ready. We're going to be talking about 100% blockages in your arteries and more. So stay with us. Take it away, Christy.
Go to our website at www.alamedealliance.org. Alameda Alliance for Health is your local partner in health. We are still in this together, and we are here for you. Sponsored by the Alameda Alliance for Health and aired by the California Broadcasters.
KDOW, Palo Alto, Bay Area's business leader at KDOW.biz. On our mobile app, tune in, iHeart, and the Odyssey app. We go where you go. AM 1220 KDOW.
Sponsored by The Way to My Heart Incorporated.
Welcome to the Heart of Innovation, 60 minutes that could save life and limb with new breakthrough ideas and innovation changing the healthcare landscape. Brought to you by Patient Advocacy Group, the Global PAD Association at padhealth.org, in partnership with Reflow Medical, the pulse of medical ingenuity. Here are your hosts for the Heart of Innovation, Emmy Award-winning journalist and founder of the Global PAD Association, Kim McNicholas, and interventional cardiologist and founder of Save My Piggies Health and Wellness, Dr. John Phillips.
100% blockages along the human superhighway. That is what we're going to be talking about at some point in this show today. And I know with Dr. John here, having just gotten back from a major conference over in Boston where doctors from across the globe were gathering to talk about this such thing. I'm sure we're going to be talking about that and more, but we do have Dr. Brett Bennett from the heart of Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi, that's going to be joining us today. Not only is he going to be talking about 100% blockages, crossing those, what we call chronic total occlusions, CTOs, but also he has an incredible story that aligns with mine in terms of aortic dissections and his mom. And, you know, my mom actually passed away. His mom ended up making it through, but I hear it's what inspired him to get into cardiology. So we're going to get to his story in just a moment, but welcome back, Dr. John. You just landed on 2 feet from Boston.
Yeah, hey, happy to be here.
Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday. Yeah, we were at AMP, so the Amputation Prevention Symposium. I'm one of the course directors now, so that was kind of fun. We, I think, moved the needle for folks that want to take care of patients with peripheral arterial disease and chronic limb-threatening ischemia. It's actually kind of interesting regarding the whole CTO, these chronic total occlusions. So I had to give a talk on some of the new CPT codes that came out. So for our listeners, everything we do is based on, a code that ultimately is kind of approved for that procedure by CMS, the body that kind of we build to actually and pays us. And so it finally, we have codes that reflect the complexity of what we do. These codes went live, I think, January 1st of this year. We used to have like only 16. And if you think about how complex the plumbing is, everywhere, but specifically kind of below the belly button where things start to branch off. And Dr. Bennett will, I'd love to hear his thoughts on this stuff because I think this is a step in the right direction. But finally, it's being recognized that these blockages are a little bit more complex. And a lot of patients that have chronic limb-threatening ischemia or peripheral arterial disease, for that matter, have blockages in multiple segments. And so we're able to, I think, finally get paid for the work that we do. And I think it also hopefully will help spur a movement for other folks that don't do maybe what Dr. Bennett does to maybe try to do these cases, because oftentimes folks won't do them because you can't get paid for it, or the complexity isn't valued. And so now it is. We're about 8 months into it, and there's a little bit of lag. Somebody was there, Terry Yates was there. She's a consultant for ASCs and OBLs and helps with billing and stuff. And she said there's been a little bit of lag from for reimbursement, but it's picking up.
Yep.
So there's some other interesting things we can talk about too. But yeah, no, it was a good conference. We were in Boston for the first time, Chicago the last 15 years. So yeah, happy
I
to be
have
back.
to throw a wrench in the conversation just
Oh,
because you
please.
did mention I've been chomping at the bit, even trying to plan a whole show around this because the show is based in California, even though it streams globally. But Medi-Cal, with those new codes, has classified the new 2026 limb salvage codes as non-standard benefits. This is for the California version of Medicaid. It's called Medi-Cal. So that means denied by default. So all of these new limb salvage procedures, all of these codes, they're denied by default, while still an amputation is being approved carte blanche. And so that is something that I'm raising awareness to our lawmakers. I don't know that they realize this, but this is happening. And in fact, we had a patient ended up passing a few months ago because of this, in my opinion, because she went to an office-based lab. The office-based lab said, we're just getting denied for this procedure. And the patient was in too much pain, went to the local emergency room, and they cut off her leg. A couple weeks later, they had to do a revision, and she went home and had a blood clot and died. So what if they could have
Yes,
actually tried to save the
there's,
limb?
and I have to be careful what I say here, but I learned a lot about the use of AI that insurance companies are using to, I don't know if blanketly is the right word, but to deny a lot of claims.
Yeah.
So the interesting, so the insurance, so the AI costs the insurance company really nothing. You pay for the program, so it's not like person hours. But I think if I got it right, she said that what's the big? Is it Aetna? Maybe it was not Aetna. It was the other big health plan that's a huge. It's a big supplement for folks. They made 1.8 billion, I think, off of just using AI to reduce or to deny claims. So that's going to be a problem, and I think legislation's getting involved, and physicians have to fight back. We have to use AI to then combat these denials so that we can get them approved. So it's kind of a tit for tat here.
And I know that Dr. Bennett, we didn't, we just threw him into the fire right here. And he is in private practice in Mississippi. And I'm curious
Well,
if you felt, the hit of this at all.
No, absolutely. I agree 100%. I think it's very, very important, not just from the reimbursement side regarding these codes, but for the side of just being able to do these procedures that are needed. Anytime something new comes out or anytime we make advancements in the field, you want to be able to provide these treatments and this care for your patients. So it's important that these codes exist. It's important that it is recognized so that we can go ahead and proceed and provide the best care we can for our patients. And that's what we're all hoping for at the end of the day. From a private practice side, I mean, certainly that does play a role. But again, the big thing here is just that we're promoting knowledge about the disease processes, knowledge about the technology, and the ability to have these areas treated.
I think one of the biggest issues that we have is there were some papers, some articles that came out that seem to blend the two different types of PAD. You have the general PAD, the intermittent claudicants versus the CLI patients. And I think that the blurriness between the two is really what has led a lot of these insurance companies um, to just delay and deny, especially the CLI procedures. Yes, if you're an intermittent claudicant, meaning that you walk, you get a cramp, it goes away when it stops. Walking is the best medicine. Even, some medicine is the best medicine for that. You don't need to jump into a procedure right away. And yes, there are doctors that are treating patients for that, but that's the handful of patients, the exception to the rule. The larger number of doctors that are out there are trying to treat the advanced stage patients, and these poor patients are suffering, having to dangle their legs over the side of the bed at night to get that gravity working for them so they can get that blood flowing because the insurance says, we'll think about it for a couple weeks. And coming up next, right here on The Heart of Innovation, we'll have more with Dr. Brett Bennett and hear his story. And we'll talk about some of these complex blockages that we've been talking about. The doctors are fighting for the chance to get through. That's next, right here on KDOW. Stay with us.
Leg health can
Well, that went in a whole other direction.
Well, I mean, I think I was thrown into that fire because the person that was supposed to give that talk couldn't make it, and so I just used his slides. But so I was on a panel that I wasn't supposed to be on really, and I just started listening. I'm like, this is, and she's graphed. I don't know. So Terry Yates is out of Columbus, but she helps build ASC or helps physicians with ASCs and OBLs, I think, across the country. And so her fingers on that pulse. And then there was also an attorney that was also on a panel that kind of helped, or at least shed a little bit of light into like what these insurance companies are doing and why they're flagging certain procedures and who's, I don't know if it's a watch list, but like some of the audits that occur. And unfortunately, it a lot of it has to do with, I think, the overutilization of atherectomy in the non-hospital based centers. It's like 16 times higher, which, and I asked that question. I'm like, because there's both sides to that coin, okay? But I mean, we can't ignore that fact. I can get 5 times, 6 times maybe, but 16 times, I mean, you know what that's from. And so CMS isn't stupid, and that's
30 seconds.
problem. So anyway, I'm sorry. You want to bring us back, Kim, or I'm just
No, I don't mind. No, and it wasn't a negative. I always love because we never know where we're going to go with it anyway. So you could bring us back
I'll bring
and
us
start
back.
where you
All right.
were.
Oh yeah, we need to do a moment of inspiration.
Yeah. Oh, Christy, can you go right into it?
Sure.
That's 800-348-0933. Paid for by the Detox and Treatment Helpline.
AM 1220 KDOW.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Dr. John Phillips, spectacular vascular moment of inspiration.
So this one was, I actually used this quote for that talk about the codes being kind of re-looked at. It was over a decade before someone had looked at these codes and kind of allowed us to bill for certain procedures. So like Kim, the intravascular lithotripsy, the shockwave, that's finally an add-on code now. So because we recognize that works. But anyway, I quote Princess Vespa from Spaceballs when she's rescued by Lone Star, and the quote was, "About time, what took you so long?" And that's kind of what I said to CMS. It's about time you did this, and what took you so long? So anyway, it didn't, like, one of the room was so big that we were in. So you know how everybody sits in the back. So I couldn't tell if people were laughing or if they just kind of get sick of my quotes, but we'll see. I thought it was funny.
I thought it was funny. I still think it's funny. And even see, Dr. Bennett is also laughing. So that's all that counts.
Who doesn't like Spaceballs? I mean, come on.
But I mean, I think that Dr. Bennett would agree. There are probably a lot of things that you argue every single day. It's like, oh my God, how long have I talked till I'm blue in the face? And it's about time.
I want to. I'm going to ask both of you a question here, and this is going to be controversial. But someone said this to me, and I know we have a lot of patients that are listening, and don't shoot the messenger here. But I'd like to explore this thought if I could. Okay, are you ready?
Are you ready, Dr. Bennett? Oh, I don't know where he's going with this.
Okay. I wasn't going to say this, but I feel like I have to. So I was talking to somebody from industry, and I said, we were talking about the fact that almost 20% of patients, their first exposure to a vascular person is maybe a vascular surgeon, and it's an amputation. And we were talking about, and it's getting better, but it's still not great. And we were talking about how is it that folks can, not recognize that a black dot or something going on in their foot is not an alarm. Okay. And he said, he's like, this patient population, it's an unsympathetic patient population. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, there's a perception out there that these folks do this to themselves. they don't take care of themselves. You know, the smoking plays a role, the diabetes. And so it's like, you know, people with cancer, that's a sympathetic patient population. But he said people with, in the opinion of some, is that the people that have peripheral arterial disease and the critical illness, it's unsympathetic. And so it's easier, in his opinion, it's easier, and I agree, I do agree with this. It's easier for insurance companies to say, okay, you did this to yourself. Why, you know, or it's easier for maybe surgeons to, oh, okay, well, you know, you're not going to take care of yourself. So this, that, and the other. I think there's a little bit of truth to that. It's not 100% true, but I'm curious, does that ring with anybody, or is that just like, am I crazy?
Absolutely. I'll dive right into that one because, that's one of the things that, I've really seen. I'm born and raised in Mississippi. And when you think about the graphs and you go to meetings and that sort of thing, you see graphs of the country. Mississippi is always first when you want to be last and last when you want to be first, kind of thing. We're kind of right in the hotbed as far as vascular disease from both a coronary side and a peripheral side. I think PAD is one of the things that has long been underdiagnosed. And a lot of that can have to do with, the patient idea there of just getting up, walking, exercising, that sort of thing. The less active you are, the less likely you're going to be to notice some of these symptoms. So, again, I think it's very important to live that healthier, active lifestyle, make sure you're exercising, doing all the right things from that standpoint, seeking medical care, just so you know what your numbers are. There's risk factors here that oftentimes are underdiagnosed as well. So think about diabetes and the way that just wreaks havoc on your vascular system. So we've got diabetics, we have smokers, we have folks like this that may have PAD that don't know it. And then when we are diagnosed with peripheral arterial disease like that, one of the things that you're mentioning is that kind of how do we go about treating it and best ways to treat it. And when we're able to catch it early and we're able to intervene in a way that may be endovascular first and not to down vascular surgery, I mean, there's absolutely a place, and we work very well with the vascular surgeons here in this area as well. It's certainly a place for all of it. But when we talk about getting to the point of an amputation where you're at, I think the last I've read was, the 1-year mortality after a major amputation, lower extremity amputation for peripheral arterial disease is somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 35%. And then, as we get further out, we're talking a 5-year mortality of 80+%. So if we have a major amputation at a young age, what are we doing long term here? I think while you mentioned it might be the easy answer right in that moment to fix a toe that is black or dark or that sort of thing, is that really the right answer? And I think we need to better understand the disease process early and do our best to treat this early to make the biggest difference.
Being proactive. I mean, Kim, so what do you, I mean, do you think that there's some truth to, is that the elephant in the room, that this is an unsympathetic patient population, and that's perhaps our government, like we don't fight for them as much as we do for patients with cancer or other, life-threatening diseases? And we should ask Douglas too, his thoughts. He's a patient that has, he's got PAD.
Yeah, I mean, so because 70% of Americans don't even know that PAD exists, even if they do have it, I think when you're talking about sympathetic versus unsympathetic, you're directing it towards the insurance company, the government that refuses to move the ARC Act forward. That is the piece of legislation that would require coverage for early testing for people who are most at risk, whether it's high cholesterol or diabetes or high blood pressure or history of smoking, whatever it might be. Is it the doctors and the clinicians that maybe are unsympathetic because they're sitting there in clinic and they're saying, stop smoking, stop smoking, stop smoking, stop smoking. And then you have a patient that comes in, like as we did last week, where he was supposed to have stopped, smoking, but at 6:30 in the morning prior to the procedure, well, he had to have a cigarette. And there's, no willpower. And we see this over and over. But in the nearly 14,000 patients that we support across the globe, what we found since we started is not just a population of people who have a history of smoking or diabetes just because of what they eat. We're also seeing a presentation of PAD from autoimmune conditions and clotting disorders and possible post-COVID results. And so we're seeing a very different population that end up presenting in late stage CLI. We're even seeing a younger population, and that could also be because of the diabetes and vaping. And you could argue, well, you should have taken care of yourself as a kid.
Well, right. So like,
Right.
I mean, is it fair to say that, they did this to themselves? So, and again, I'm playing devil's advocate. I don't believe this,
No,
but
it's
I
a
mean,
good
is it, I
question, but
mean,
does it mean they shouldn't have treated it? It's just like saying, well, you're the one who ended up going to the motorcycle park and, doing a wheelie. So you broke your leg. That's your fault. We're not going to treat you.
Yeah.
We're going to delay, putting a cast on that leg, according to the insurance company, because you did it to yourself. And I even think in some senses with a lot of cancers, you could argue, well, you ate a lot of ultra processed foods, you drank a lot of alcohol, you ended up smoking at some point, you're not exercising, you drank too much coffee, like whatever it might be, you can still argue it. But I think what a lot of the folks who advocated for the folks with cancer and early testing and care did right was the messaging. So maybe coming up next right here on the Heart of Innovation, we talk about what should the messaging be? What would be helpful for patients? And we're going to bring in our Patient Warrior Task Force Chairman, Douglas, to hear his thoughts on this topic. So stay with us right here on KDOW.
Bro, that's a move to the hoop, Kim. That was a move to the hoop. Yeah, that's a great segue into the next section. I'd love to hear what Brett, what you have to think, what you think, but patients too. Whoever's listening, chime in seriously, because this is your chance to fight for yourself or
Yeah,
help us understand it.
We have
Looks
Rusty
like Joshua
Hubcap
put in
Ford.
there that doctors don't look at feet. I think that's a really good point. I mean, how often do I know a lot of my partners aren't taking folks' shoes off when they come in?
Right.
We know it'd be really fun is if we created a Save My Piggies poster that, we can get one of the sponsors as part of the Save My Piggies series. They could sponsor the posters that we give to doctors to put up on the outside of the clinic wall.
The inside, yeah, inside the, yep. Because I'll
in
tell
the
you,
patient rooms, we've started hanging little posters around that just highlight symptoms of PED. So the patients, and I have several come in when I enter the room, and they're like, "Hey, doc, let me ask you about that."
Yes.
We did that. I'll tell you, we did something like that probably 10 years ago for AAA screening, and one of our cardiologists said, "Take this down. People are asking me questions that I don't want to answer about this," and I was like, "Oh, okay." And we have Medtronic, so their RFA catheter for venous ablation. We have their posters and with pictures of varicose veins and LDS and stuff. And patients are like, they're like, "Hey, doc, what about this?" And I'm like, "Yep, you probably have it. We'll have to talk about it next time." But here we go.
Yeah.
That's a great idea, Kimberly. Get some Save My Piggies posters in our offices, and maybe I don't know. We have to do something.
Send some our way.
Yeah, we have to do something.
Yeah, we used to have these chat posters. They would say CHAT, and doctors, you chat with your doctor. Carotids, heart, abdomen, and toes. And we even created a couple videos, but it would be fun to have just a poster that says, "Hey, before you go in or while you're in there, just take off your shoes, take off your socks." And then a few reasons why.
Because every patient that comes in with suspected PAD or venous insufficiency is supposed to be put in shorts, shoes and socks off and in shorts. But
I hope that video of Douglas that shows someone falling off a ladder is not active.
Oh boy.
Did he fall off the ladder?
He did.
Did you fall off the ladder, Douglas?
He looks like he's trying to show us something.
30 seconds.
Oh, he has his poster there of PAD. Oh. He has his PAD posters. That's so awesome. I don't know where he got them, though. Oh, wow. Douglas, where'd you get? I'll have to ask him where he got those at the next break. But Douglas, get ready. I think Dr. John is going to ask Dr. Bennett something, then he might ask you. Did he really fall off the ladder?
Oh boy.
I thought you were he admitted it. He just admitted it.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Sorry, welcome back, everybody. We're, being live is awesome. But Douglas, our warrior patient, was trying to get us something in his house, and so we have, he's on camera, so he evidently fell off the ladder. Douglas, are you okay, brother? Like, unmute. Like, let's make sure you're all right. Okay, he gave us a thumbs up. So, okay, let's get back to kind of what we were talking about here. So
we love you.
I know. So, Brett, what do you think? Kim kind of threw that out there. What is the messaging that we should be using to help raise awareness? Because clearly, I mean, what we're doing now, what Kim does, helps, but it's not enough. We're missing something.
Absolutely. I mean, just like Kim mentioned, so many folks are unaware of what peripheral arterial disease is. So I think raising awareness from however that may be, as simple as posters in clinic offices and that sort of thing, as we discussed, would certainly raise awareness to the symptoms. Seeking medical care on a regular basis, screening on a regular basis as well. So if you have diabetes, I mean, ABI tests are very, very easy to check for anybody that doesn't know what that is. That's the ankle brachial index, where you measure the blood pressure in the legs and the arms, and you get a ratio. They're very easy screening tests to perform that can certainly raise awareness for folks that have this kind of issue. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you need an intervention if you have peripheral arterial disease, but at least you can be more aggressive with your risk factor modification going forward. But yeah, I think the biggest part of that is raising awareness just in the communities around, raising awareness among physicians around as well, primary care folks. One of the mentions in there was making sure that you look at your feet and that sort of thing. So certainly diabetics and all that need to make sure that they're looking at their feet as well. But yeah, I think the awareness is going to start ground level and work its way all the way up. From a physician standpoint, that awareness is going to extend into what the treatment options are. And, as you mentioned before, the unsympathetic as far as cancer versus peripheral arterial disease. Well, if you have complex peripheral arterial disease, but traditionally there was no treatment other than an amputation, then you may be less likely to be aggressive with your treatment form there versus something like chemotherapy, where maybe you're more aware of it and know what options are out there.
Yeah, excellent
We
point.
still have so many doctors that tell our patients, why delay the inevitable? And you would never tell a cancer patient. And every time I say this to a general population of doctors, they always say, well, it's apples and oranges. But no, I always, and I hear this from some of the most advanced doctors like both of you, that you wouldn't tell a cancer patient that, oh, why delay the inevitable? I mean, we could do chemotherapy, we could offer radiation, we could help you live, another day to play with your grandkids, but we're not going to do it. You're going to die anyway. And with these patients, they say, well, you're going to lose your leg anyway. So why even bother? Let's just cut it off now. And honestly, I hear this still all the time.
Well, okay. So Douglas, you're a patient. Do you think there's any validity to the statement that we made about, you're an unsympathetic, marginalized group of folks, and maybe that's why you're blown off? Does that resonate at all? You might be on mute.
I think he's not on mute, but he might be having some audio trouble. But it would be interesting if he wanted to jump back out and jump back in, and then we could have him, come on and ask the question. That was a very fair and very direct question. And I know I've had the conversation
Heinz is
with
on
him
there. Heinz, you want
quite a number of times. Heinz, do you want to jump in?
I can't say we're totally unsympathetic. I really can't say that, because a lot of it is in your genes. Hereditary. Diabetes can be from your genes. Arterial problems can be from your genes. So when do you start looking at people's genes or hereditary factors? At what age, to make sure that they don't have the same problems that their predecessors had?
Good point. Yeah.
And Heinz, you're not the stereotypical TAD patient.
That's true. There's a lot of us out here that had cancer with radiation and or chemotherapy. And in my case, I had radiation in my leg. Guess what happened 39 years later? Peripheral artery disease.
Yeah.
That leg only.
Yeah.
And also vein problems. Same area.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Douglas,
Hey,
are you
Douglas?
back?
I'm back. Can y'all hear me?
We
Yeah.
can.
So when you said that earlier, my very first thought was
I hate Dr. Phillips.
no, the insanity. I kind of my brain went to the fact that I do a smoking group on Monday nights, and the insanity of, as a patient, I have to accept responsibility for the simple fact that if I smoke a cigarette, I'm going to lose my left leg. But I'm still smoking, or I'm not eating right, or whatever. So there is a lot of responsibility on our part as patients to become aware of what you're saying. And how hard is it for me to walk into my doctor's office and say, yeah, I'm walking, but I smoked 2 cigarettes before I came in. And there is that dilemma there. I hope that makes sense to you, because I have to take some responsibility there for my part in playing. So if my doctor went 4 hours, he got through, he did everything, you're good to go, Doug. And then I get 2 miles down the road and I light a cigarette. It's like 2 steps forward and 2 steps back.
Okay. Brett, how do you unpack that?
Yeah, I certainly think that risk factors play a role. I think it is, again, important that we're seeing physicians on a regular basis, really from a patient standpoint. If you have that family history and that sort of thing, again, it's important to see your primary care, see what your risk is. When we see, as a cardiologist, when we see patients who have known vascular disease, whether or not that's carotid disease or whether or not that is heart disease, I think certainly paying attention to the symptoms and then screening as well for peripheral arterial disease is going to be a big component of it. And then doing our best to risk modify going forward. And a lot of that does fall to the patient as far as exercise, modifying risk factors that you can, such as smoking and that sort of thing as well.
Real quick though, just think about, I had an aorta bifemoral bypass. I had an axial femoral bypass before the doctor even said PAD, or even told me to stop.
Told.
Yeah, but even before he told me to stop smoking or anything. And so I had all these procedures done before he even brought up the education part in meeting this group. And Dr. Phillips has taught me how to live with PAD today.
Yeah. And on that note, coming up next right here on the Heart of Innovation, we'll have more with Dr. Brett Bennett and, of course, my co-host, Dr. John Phillips. So stay with us right here on the Heart of Innovation on KDOW. Don't go away.
What if?
I might have to change that that thumbnail.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
It's interesting. It's a really good conversation. We do have, and Wanda, I wanted you, if you press, I muted you. So just to let you know, when I ask you to unmute, you just press the number 6 on your phone and it'll unmute you. So just FYI, it's just the number, just 6 unmutes your phone to ask a question. But I'm curious from Douglas's standpoint and Heinz, does it does this conversation offend you to think that there is a stereotype in that they are looking at PAD and
This needs to be live though. You need to say that to them live, because it is a stereotype. That's the word. That is the word.
And the thing is that it feels like they're acting on it. It feels like they're delaying and denying care also because of it. They're not paying attention because of that.
Well, again, I'm like, Brett, you're in Mississippi, and so I would imagine it's similar to this. Somebody showed the heat map, or so like they did a satellite image of Canada at night, and they were talking about issues with access to care just in general. And so you look at Canada and 99% of it's black at night, and then there's a couple. It's like North Korea. Like there's a couple of hot spots of energy and where people live, and that's probably so. There's maps out there all over the place that show, folks that live in the South, in these more rural areas, have higher amputation rates. They don't have access to, physicians. But I wonder, is that the same for people with cancer? I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. Same
Yeah,
for
again, I think that's an awareness thing. When they hear the
yeah.
word cancer, they immediately alarm bells go off, and you're running and you're going. With peripheral arterial disease, I don't think people realize the severity of it or the implications of it. I don't
Yeah.
think they realize the
We
numbers,
need to
like you
rename it.
mentioned, the
We need to
mortality
rename
rate
it.
with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would love to hear what these guys think about if it's a stereotype. But I mean, I'll be honest with you. I know physicians in our area that will not treat somebody with PAD who's a severe claudican if they smoke. They just won't. I never have subscribed to that. In fact, I saw a patient last week, and and I said, sir, you smoke. Are you gonna quit? He's like, nope. I've been smoking. He's 62. He's like, I've been smoking since I'm 11. I thought, holy cow. Um, and we talked about it. I do, you do your best to raise awareness, but if they're not going to, I mean, are you not going to treat the person to try to help them? I mean, I'm going to try to help them,
I will
honestly.
absolutely try to help them. I mean, I feel the same way about it.
And I'm not doing it just to do a procedure. I mean, I'm not.
Yeah.
30
You
seconds.
mentioned Winscott earlier. He told me in training, he's like, don't be afraid of some of the most complex ones. Some of the easiest ones are the least pressures when they already have one foot in the bucket, kind of thing. So
they certainly are. All right. So Kim, you want to take us back and float that stereotype thing? I kind of
Sure,
like
if Hines and Douglas, and then we
Douglas,
can
you gonna
even
fire
bring
off?
in
Okay,
Wanda.
Douglas is good. Yeah, and Wanda. I don't,
AM 1220 KDOW.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. We're here with Dr. Brett Bennett from the heart of Mississippi in Jackson, and our good friend Dr. John pulled the pin on a very big controversial topic about peripheral artery disease, which is that poor circulation in the legs in advanced stages. It can become limb threatening. And we were talking about the stereotype that a lot of physicians and insurance companies and lawmakers have about PAD, which is it's people who are not taking care of themselves and it's their fault. And because it's their fault, we're going to delay and deny these procedures, and we're just going to become more unsympathetic to them. And I'm curious, from Douglas and Hines, who spoke up in the last segment. Also, we can bring in Wanda is here with us, but are you offended by what Dr. John is saying and Dr. Bennett is saying in terms of really the stereotype of who is the PAD patient? Douglas?
If I was diagnosed, 4 years ago, if I had thought about this question before I knew what I knew now, yes, there would have been that, because I was raised to believe you had the white coat, you knew everything, and everything was going to be fine. And I just did what you told me to do. That was it. So, but today, with my knowledge of understanding of what my lifestyle creates with my PAD, yeah, I have to understand that I have to, but I've been smoking. I'm 65. I've been smoking since I was probably 12 years old. So it's one of those things. And I work. If I work in, it's easier to stop at Sonic than it is to go home and have a good, heart healthy meal. So it is a process of education on my part to understanding what I need to do today.
So it's actually empowering. It's not necessarily offensive to you. You're just owning it so you can make the changes and taking responsibility. What about you, Hines? What are your thoughts? Because you obviously you said that radiation damage led to your presentation of disease. And you're lumped in with everybody.
Yeah, that's true. But with that, I sometimes look at peripheral artery disease forums on Facebook, and I see these people that are like 30, 35, and they say, I've been eating right, never smoked, I'm thin, and whatever else. And I'm all of a sudden I got these issues with my arteries here. Where's this coming from? And then you got other people that smoke and drink all their lives and live to be 95 and never had a problem. So how do you answer something like that when somebody smokes and drinks and dies at 50 versus 95? And it's something hard. Everybody's body is different, but you want to do what's right for your body and not step on it. Don't hurt yourself.
It's interesting. We have Joshua, who is our YouTube producer, and he says he knows World War II vets, 2 of them, over 100, and they still use shots of whiskey every day. And yet you see all the studies out there that say don't drink at all. Right, Dr. Bennett?
Yes. So I will circle back to the point that Douglas and Hines made just a second ago. Again, I don't think this is all going to fall on the patients from that standpoint. As you mentioned, that without the knowledge that you gain through this awareness, you were unaware of maybe what was going on. And, from a physician standpoint, again, I think it's important that we understand and come to appreciate all that we don't know as well. I mean, there's a lot of ego, for lack of better words, in the medical field and that sort of thing. And sometimes you can meet resistance where if folks aren't familiar with a disease process or how best to treat it, they just kind of ignore it, so to speak. So again, it's awareness from our standpoint as well to recognize this sort of thing. And then, once it is there and once we are to somebody that can treat these type of things, you've got to be comfortable with the disease process to treat it as well. I mean, not every complex peripheral arterial disease patient should be treated in an outpatient rural medical center type thing. And that's not a knock on these medical centers. It's just making sure that we appreciate it and that we get them to the right place.
Can I add one thing?
Sure.
And that's the sympathetic part, like Dr. Phillips and Dr. Bennett is part. If you find out that I've been smoking since I was 12, I wish there was a magic fairy wand I could just pick up and tap myself on the head and magically. Not everybody can just say, all right, I'm done. I'm going to change my lifestyle completely from this moment on. So it takes time, and having that sympathetic part and you working with me and gaining the knowledge and understanding of what I need.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to, again, that's why I approach my relationship with my patients is, I'm the coach, you're the quarterback, got the LSU poster, Brett's got their back. So, I mean, like I can give you I have a playbook. I'm give you a couple of plays, run pass option, and you're on the field, you read the defense and you make the call. I can't force you to throw the ball. I can try to help you. And that's what I usually say to people, but I can just only speak from my experience and how I try to approach these. Sounds like, Brett and I are on the same page, but there are a lot of folks out there that just think differently. But I don't like using the word stereotype, but there's a reason you use it because there's some truth to the phenotype or the kind of the things, the person that makes up what you're thinking.
And I know we have Wanda that's here. Wanda, share your point of view on it, and then we'll get to, I know you have a question as well, and we'd like to have the opportunity during these episodes to allow anyone who shows up to ask a question that's on their heart. But what are your thoughts on what we've been saying so far?
Well, yeah, I've smoked for 50 years, and I'm 5'9" and weigh 122 pounds. I don't have high cholesterol. My mother never smoked, and she had high blood pressure. I have high blood pressure, but it's under control. She also had, so she said, coronary artery disease. I know she took nitroglycerin pills.
So you do have some genetics in there as well. And so,
right. But
that,
then
that
also, yes, I mean, I have eaten fried foods, but I don't really like to fry. So, I mean, I've eaten a lot of good food, a lot of vegetables, baked fish, baked chicken.
And that all sounds
Smoking,
good.
probably
And
what,
coming up next, right here on the Heart of Innovation, we'll have our final thoughts, of course, with Wanda and Dr. Phillips and Dr. Bennett. So stay with us right here on the Heart of Innovation. Don't go away.
Sorry, we didn't get to the CTO portion.
Yeah, that's all right.
Well, hopefully,
I
maybe
think
we
this
can
is-
have.
this is more
Dr.
impactful. You can
Hey,
Brett,
Kim,
Dr.
I really
Bennett?
do have to tell you my story, even if it's not on here. I'll tell you about it.
Yeah,
About
we could even.
the aortic dissection. No, that was pretty crazy.
Yeah, I want to definitely. How should we let one, because we have 4 minutes left in this last one. We have an after show. So it continues on afterwards for a few minutes. So usually we'll stay on about 10 minutes, and just share a little bit more. So if you want to stay on afterwards, we could just finish out this 4 minutes. I know we didn't
Sure.
get to the story during the first part of the show, but I can always edit it in as well into the final afterwards too. Because I do really want to. Oops, we have Lori also joining us. Dr. John, how do you want to do this? Should we get to Wanda's question during this? It's
Sure.
kind of off topic, or should we wait till
maybe.
afterwards and finish up?
I think, well, we should probably, for continuity. I think this is a great conversation, honestly. I think we should probably, for continuity, just kind of continue what we're talking about, and then afterwards.
And can you lead it with, so we can get Dr. Bennett to share on the thoughts here and let you guys kind of finish up?
Yep.
Just so he has more time to jump in.
Yep. You can take it. Brett, you can
And
take
then
us
Wanda, we'll get you afterwards. We'll get your question afterwards, okay?
okay. Actually, it's 2 questions, but okay.
I'm going to mute you one more time, and then we'll do the end of the show, and then we're going to jump in. He's going to share his story, and then we'll get to. I know that there are a couple other questions that I know Douglas always has, and Heinz. So, and maybe Lori might have one, but we'll spend just a couple minutes after the show. Hi, Lori. I'm going to mute you though.
All right, good.
And then if you have any questions or anything after we're done with the main show, you can ask. Love your photo in the background.
30 seconds.
Call now to learn more. 800-296-1210. 800-296. $12.10.
1220 KDOW.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Well, Brett, Kim, we've got about 4 minutes left, fourth quarter here. 2 minute warning. Got to give a special shout out to our sponsor, Reflow Medical. Thanks for stimulating this. They're allowing us to opine on this topic. So, Brett, finishing, final thoughts on kind of what we've talked about. What do we do moving forward? I mean, I can't answer in 4 minutes, but what are your thoughts?
Oh man, I think it's starting ground level. So certainly patient education, the best we can do, as you mentioned, flyers and things like that. Awareness, just like this show, the podcast that we're doing right now is certainly hopefully going to raise awareness from that standpoint. So the more that we can teach and allow our patients to understand, again, the more knowledge they get, the more power they have to at least take some control over their medical care and their risk factors going forward. And then from a physician standpoint as well, that education needs to be there from ground level up.
And for me, I mean, my biggest concern is people are focusing on community screenings and, creating walks and whatever else. But why not just go after the primary care doctors as if they have, don't have enough to do? But it really starts there. The community screenings barely move the needle at all, if at all, as my experience has shown, because we were involved in with a large organization that was doing them across the country. The numbers have tested sound great, but where's the needle being moved? The needle is going to move when we get to those primary care doctors and we get that ARC Act, that legislation passed, where doctors are actively looking for it and screening for it for everyone at risk. That's where the change is going to come.
Yeah.
You
I mean,
agree?
well, I think it's just it's continuing to beat the drum and getting patients to recognize the risk factors early on, being proactive. We need to start making change. I mean, Brett, you know this, like there's a movement to start checking people's cholesterol in their 30s and treating it. So we've got to just, I think, get on that horse, whip it a little bit, and see how far she can run.
Right. I think certainly guidelines play a part in that as far as primary care screening. As long as it makes its way into guidelines, that's going to help the reimbursement side, as you mentioned, just with the coding on the beginning of the show. The more that you incorporate that into it, the more you're going to move the needle from that standpoint.
But just as with the Susan G. Komen Foundation, and they created a grassroots movement to get women tested, it's got to start with the community. Every single one of the people that are tuning in right now, you need to go to your primary care doctor, start there and say, have you heard about peripheral artery disease? I have risk factors, check my feet. And I think that is the place to start. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Bennett. We really appreciate you being here, joining us. I know we started off with the topic about CTOs. We're just going to have you back, or those that are listening on KDOW can join us at youtube.com/the way to my heart. And we're going to continue the conversation there. We're going to hear his story, his mom's story, and more. So join us online in just a few minutes and join us for the after show. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the after show for the Heart of Innovation. We have Dr. Brett Bennett that's here. And Dr. Bennett, you know, I talked you into coming on the show. I don't know if I originally came up with the topic and I just said, we need you. And you and I just met this week. And we actually met through a company called AngioSave, Santriva. He used this device. I call it the gopher. And I know it's not the gopher, but I think it's pretty accurate to kind of what it does and gnaws right through 100% blockages. And I said, oh, by the way, you sound really kind. Would you mind coming on our show on Saturday? We had a last minute cancellation and he was kind enough. And it was like, then, oh, by the way, we have a patient for you too. So
no, it was fun. It has been a whirlwind. And yeah, that is a pretty cool little device for CTO intervention in the periphery. Dr. John, are you familiar with it? Have you used it?
I'd never heard of it until somebody I was doing a panel thing and someone had talked about it. Looks interesting. I don't know, but I think someone said it's like $3,000, and I don't know.
It's pretty expensive and certainly more of a niche
and it's a niche thing, and there's no reimbursement for it. Or they're trying to get what do you call it? Like arthroplasty or something like this? Like,
yes, that's the term they're using.
Trying to get a reimbursement
for that's reimbursable as it sits at the moment.
No, that's gonna be a tall order. But yeah, I mean that's we know that when you can stay within the vessel, the results are better for treatment. So I mean, we'll see.
And if someone's on deck for amputation, I mean, I know the patients would rather have someone say, if you're worth the $3,000 to at least try to see if this can get through, if we can save your leg. I think that's really important.
You would think so, but when you can use a wire and a catheter that costs $500 or less, it's all.
I mean, if you can get through, right, but what if you can't?
Well, there's a will. There's always a way to get through it. So.
I like your attitude. And that's what we were going to talk about with Dr. Bennett. I still would love to. I wish he could stay for an hour. We could pre-record an entire show for later this month. But
Ooh, she might get you there, Brett. I cannot stay for an hour, so.
but that's what, when I was looking at your site, your profile, that is really your specialty. You love getting through these complex blockages, whether in the coronary, and also, I mean, if you could tackle a beating, these muscles and with a moving target, then why not a straight shot in the legs, right?
Yeah, I would argue to Dr. John's point there. As far as a CTO, it is certainly a little bit easier, maybe more forgiving would be the right answer, to do that in peripheral arterial disease as opposed to coronary disease. But coronary CTO is something that was just really underserved in the area that I'm in, kind of in the deep South, and especially in the Mississippi. It was something I was exposed to early on. I went to, one of those ACC meetings when they were doing live cases, and that's always my favorite part of these big national meetings. It's one thing to stand on a panel, and I've done the same thing, and not to knock anybody doing it, but to stand up there and say, this is what you should do, this is how you handle this. It's another thing to actually do that in practice when this happens, so to speak. So I love the live cases. You see how people react, on a dime, and how they handle different situations. But I saw a live case, and this was before I even really knew what CTO was. And the guy comes on. It was actually Lombardi, that's out in Washington. I don't know if you know him well or not, but he gets on there and he's saying, what he's going to do, and he's going to make this go here and everywhere else. And I'm like, what? And then next thing you know, it happened, and I was like, oh my goodness. So it really opened my eyes to it. I went back home and I started telling everybody about it. Again, I was, I think, just starting cardiology fellowship. I convinced a few people to become interested in it with me, specifically staff, so that we could start doing it there. And we did, and one kind of went to the other, and then started a CTO program when I went out into private practice back in 2017. So we've been rolling for a while.
Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible.
So
And we have Bruce that's asking about, have you used the AngioSafe solution? And I know that's actually how we met was because Wanda, who's on here as well, she's, she has PAD. She came to us and said, hey, have you heard of this Santriva device? Do you
Right.
think it would work for me? And she messaged the company and said, hey, can you tell us a doctor
Right. So
in the
yeah, I
area?
mean, to that point, again, I think the reason that it really hasn't caught on to the degree it has yet is just more of a cost issue. It's one of those things that, unfortunately, for better or worse, a lot of times you're at the whim of a hospital being willing to pay for a device unless it's in the context of a research study or something along those lines where the device company is providing the device. So that's really the limitation from that standpoint. Again, it's more of a niche kind of thing. There are certainly different ways to cross an occlusion. There are 100 different ways to get around things. So it's not necessarily always necessary or indicated, but again, it's certainly a cool tool to have in the tool bag.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, so Wanda, you want to jump in and you want to ask your question, because you're the one who brought it to our attention, and ask him your question.
Yes, I have a blocked iliac and common femoral artery that my doctor could not get through. And I was curious as to what some of the newer options were. I heard that you are a CTO expert and you also have Santriva. So I was wondering, how do you approach cases like this?
Sure. So every patient is different. And again, it would depend on the exact anatomy of you personally, as far as where that iliac is occluded. I know you mentioned the common femoral as well. There can be options for both an antegrade and retrograde approach. You have to be very careful in the iliac specifically. A perforation could go bad in a hurry. So again, it is a much higher risk proposition crossing a CTO in an iliac as compared to a CTO maybe further down the leg, as in the SFA, the popliteal, or certainly below the knee. But again, would have to approach that individually. Be hard to know exactly, what was tried before. Again, that would have an impact on what approach we would use going forward.
As we say, the iliac arteries, just like the coronaries, don't take a joke very well.
No.
No. But I'm curious, how do you handle, being in private practice? Do you practice in a hospital, or you practice in your own office-based facility or ASC, or both? In a situation where you have the common femoral, you decide you can't get through, you also are struggling with the iliac. Do you have the option for a hybrid approach?
So absolutely yes. Yes to all of the above. So I am in private practice. We are affiliated with St. Dominic Hospital, which I believe is as far as cardiac and vascular wise, the biggest in the state of Mississippi, or at least most active in the state of Mississippi from that standpoint. It's in Jackson. So that's where I do the majority of procedures that I do in the hospital. We do have an ambulatory surgery center as well that's been open for about 2 years. We do a fair amount at the ambulatory surgery center. To John's point, as far as coronary work, in a coronary artery in an ambulatory surgery center in the state of Mississippi, we're not allowed to do atherectomy. So you cannot do rotational atherectomy, laser atherectomy. You cannot do intracoronary lithotripsy either. So shockwave or, the new Boston bolt device, none of that can be done in a coronary in the ambulatory surgery center. Now, from a PAD standpoint, it's essentially wide open. So you could do absolutely whatever you wanted or needed in an ambulatory surgery center. Again, as we talked about cost and things like that, it's going to be a lot harder to convince my ambulatory surgery center to pay for massive amount for a device than a hospital for a, one or two off kind of patient. So the more complex stuff, as in a chronic total occlusion, typically is not done at an ambulatory surgery center. It's going to be done in the hospital. Again, the approach that you mentioned as far as a hybrid approach, so absolutely. So antegrade, retrograde, as far as popliteal access, pedal access, that sort of thing, and making wires rendezvous. And that's what I was mentioning to her just then about if you had just an included common femoral or iliac, oftentimes you could go from the common femoral on that side and from the other side or from above from the wrist. And have a pretty good success rate. If the common femoral is occluded, you'd be talking about going much lower, like the popliteal or somewhere in that neighborhood. But yes, definitely have the ability for a hybrid approach from that standpoint. And to Dr. John's point, that's the reason that there's almost always a way if there's a will. It's just more a matter of, is it the right thing from a safety standpoint and risk standpoint?
Safety and risk standpoint from whose perspective? I'm just going to throw it out there, just because you guys, and what I like patients to know is that every single case, physicians such as yourselves, the plumbers, are really putting their life on the line because of the exposure to radiation. And the longer the case, the more exposure. And yes, you do take precautions. Many people wear a device that monitor the exposure. But I've even heard from folks in Dr. Phillips' cath lab that he's ignored it when a limb is on the line, and he's gone from an antegrated approach coming down from the groin. And I said, you know what, I'm not even going to wait for everything to move around. I'm just going to jump right in. And these are the doctors we're talking about. You guys are seriously putting your lives on the line for someone's limb.
Well, I mean, thankfully a couple of points there. Last year, so I think in 2025, I don't know about 2026, there's a match. So people that are cardiologists can, if they want to pursue more training and be an interventionalist, do what Brett does, or if they want to be an electrician, or if they want to do heart failure, so they apply to be a fellow in that subspecialty. Interventional cardiology had 72 spots, I think, that went unfilled. So less and less people are getting into this field because of some of those reasons. And it's important that we recognize them. We're Brett, I don't know if you have it or not, but we're trying to get some of these radiation mitigation systems that are kind of like in case the patient on the table, and it helps reduce radiation. And there's the orthopedic issues too. So our field is in jeopardy, honestly. But you got to do what you got to do if you're, as they say, in for a penny, in for a pound sometimes. And we're very cautious about radiation exposure. At least I am.
I agree. We certainly do what we can to mitigate that. We do not have any of I know there's some newer systems out that allow you to go lead free and that sort of thing. We do not have that at the moment, at least at our facility. We've looked at it, but it have just not went that route yet. We certainly
it's 300. It's $300,000 a lab, so it costs money. But there are it's like a workman's comp kind of thing, and I think health systems are going to have to pony up and pay for these things.
Right.
Heinz?
Dr. Phillips, I know you probably know this answer. I'm not sure Dr. Bennett does. So based on what you've done before. I realize with people that have had stents in their popliteal arteries, they got a certain range of motion limitation. How does that work with PTAP?
Well, I mean, so one of the problems that we have with some of these arteries and lack of durability is in the coronary space, the arteries on top of the heart, and yeah, it moves, but it's actually kind of protected to some degree from a lot of movement, and that's why the stents stay open so long. In the femoral popliteal region, that artery's under torsion and flexion extension, and it twists around and stuff. So it's kind of a lot to ask for a piece of metal to sit in there and kind of not be affected by some of these things, and ultimately not maybe succumb to narrowing or closure. The P-tab, you're kind of rerouting it, into the vein and then back out. And in theory, well, sometimes you're above the knee, sometimes you're below the knee, but those can be exposed too. I've had patients who have traditional bypasses. In fact, somebody showed a case of a woman who routinely closed her stents, her bypass, because she was a gardener, and so she'd be on her hands and knees, gardening, and that position would close it down. I think that poor guy presented like 4 times. She closed it down from gardening, and he kept telling her, like, you got to stop gardening. And she's like, I'm not stopping. And she developed, Brett, you would not appreciate this, but she developed a massive, because it was a CTO of the SFA, and he recanalized it, but she had a massive like pseudoaneurysm from it. And then he had to stent graft it, and then the stent graft fractured because she kept sitting. It's kind of a mess. So these arteries do succumb to just being a human being, and we have ways to try to mitigate it, which is why a lot of times we try to avoid putting stents in those regions. But sometimes you have to do that. Good question.
Thank you.
Do you find over there, Dr. Bennett, I was so excited to see that new technology was moving into Mississippi. Do you ever find that in the heart of Mississippi that you don't get approached often enough for different new tools and techniques? I don't even know if you've been approached on PTAB. We've had a lot of patients that have come our way with success in avoiding major surgical bypass in having that done.
Right. No, we've been fortunate. I mean, as I mentioned, we're a pretty large group and we do quite a bit where we are. And so we've have pretty good success as far as getting approached by folks to at least participate in trials and that sort of thing. Again, we've got a large population base. And again, Mississippi is more sparsely populated, I guess, than some of the other states around. So really the hub for care is in the Jackson area. So fortunate from that standpoint.
And we'll take one more question from Douglas, and then Dr. John, I'd like to get into and allow Dr. Bennett to share his story of how he got into cardiology
Sure.
before we let everyone on their way, because I
Sure.
think it's a really heartwarming story. Douglas, go ahead and ask your question.
2 quick ones, real quick.
Okay. I only said one. I'm just kidding.
I'm sorry. Go back to the original where we started. I'm thinking Dr. Phillips and Dr. Bennett, maybe you can answer this some. Can it be aggravating as a doctor to tell a patient that you need to do this and this, and keep coming back and you having to deal with the same thing over and over? At some point, does that get aggravating on your part? And do you really truly ever feel like, am I wasting time? Is this just the back and forth? And the second part is, I have a friend who has PAD. He was told that there's absolutely nothing they can do anymore, period. Is there a point with PAD or coronary disease where do you ever feel like that's all we can do? We can't do nothing else. And how hard is that to handle?
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer that quick, and then I'll let Dr. Bennett comment. Yes, yeah, it's frustrating. And there are times when, we talk about people that have end-stage renal disease and end-stage heart failure, and I use the term end-stage PAD. I use the term end-stage coronary artery disease. There's just sometimes you can't do anything else. You've exhausted everything, and you hope the patient can keep their leg or keep functioning if it's their heart, but if not, unfortunately, there's a reason why cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of folks in Western civilization, year after year, particularly guys. So, does it get frustrating when you tell folks to stop doing this? But it's, it's like your kids. You kind of, you love them, but you don't like what they do, but you kind of love the person that you're treating to some degree, and that's how I approach it.
What do you
I
think,
agree. I
Dr.
think it's a
Bennett?
very human response to be frustrated at times like that. I think that is a great way to put it. Why you can be frustrated, but I mean, we don't necessarily turn patients away because of it or that sort of thing, like was mentioned earlier. For the other side, again, it's very sobering to think about. Again, physicians are human. I mean, your medical care is being provided by people that are real people. I mean, always limitations from that standpoint. I mean, we can do the absolute best we can, but we're not in absolute control of everything.
Yep.
Douglas, second question. Did you get them both out there? We're all good. Awesome. And Dr. Bennett, I'd love to hear the story as to what inspired you to become an interventional cardiologist, because I hear it relates to something very near and dear to my heart with my mom.
So Kim, it does. I know we just met earlier this week, and after meeting, I did a little digging, and I found your story there, and it really reminded me a bit of my own. So right around the time that I was finishing medical school, and I know Dr. John can appreciate this, towards the end of medical school, life is pretty easy. Like you're living your best life at that point. I had already matched, but it was just before medical school graduation. Um, and my grandmother had suffered from myocardial infarction. She had went into a local hospital and had been taken care of there. The last I had seen her was in the ICU the night before. Fortunately, the next morning, they'd already written orders for her to move to the floor, and she suffered a free wall rupture, which is a complication that can happen after an MI. And unfortunately, she, passed away. So that afternoon, evening, the family, pretty much, I've got a pretty good sized family. We're all in all from Mississippi. We're all at my mother's house, which is, the oldest living child. She had an older brother that passed away in a car accident when I was about 10 or so. So everyone's at my parents' house, and all of a sudden, you're Brett. And so, I come running, and just because you've graduated medical school, everybody assumes that you know everything, even though you really know nothing. You have a lot of knowledge, you just don't really know what to do with it. So, they call, and so I come in there, and at this point, my mom she was 42 or 43 years old, young, had been very, very active. I mean, very healthy, no medical problems that we knew of at all. And anyway, I see her, and she said she was short of breath, and it felt like her throat was closing up. I assumed she was probably just having a panic attack. She didn't look real good. My uncle had already called 911, and so they come, and so they were picking my mom up that day. And so when they're picking her up, still a little uneasy, but thinking that this is probably going to be okay. There's 3 major hospitals in the area locally. My grandmother had just passed away at one of them that day. The other one was the training center where I was, and I obviously didn't want to see anybody I knew. So we went to the other one, which was St. Dominic, which is actually where I work now. So get to the hospital there, and my dad and I beat the ambulance. And when they're rolling my mom in, she's got IVs in both arms. Her blood pressure was, I think it was like 70/40 at this point. The craziest thing, this was my first experience with this. She rolls in, and she says, Brett, where am I? What's going on? And I tell her, and I mean, it's not 60 seconds later, she says, Brett, where am I? What's going on? Like it just clearly the hypoperfusion. So they do a scan right away. At first, they're not real sure what's going on. The ER doc and I kind of got into it because he started trying to tell me maybe she had indigestion or irritable bowel. And I was like, clearly she's in shock, like not again, not knocking anybody. I was like, clearly she's in shock. And so he said, we're going to do one more scan. And so anyway, when she rolls back in from that one, his eyes were big and he looked at me and he said, she's got a dissection. My dad said, what does that mean? And he said, it's torn. So she had a type A dissection. She had it wrapped. So she actually has one of her renal arteries comes off of false lumens. It was a type A dissection, but it wrapped all the way around. She went for emergent surgery that night. She was in the hospital probably about a month or so overall. Actually, great story. The cardiothoracic surgeon that has since passed away, but he gave her you can't leave AMA. And I guess she told him that she was going to my med school graduation no matter what. So he discharged her and readmitted her the same evening. So she left, wheeled to my graduation in a wheelchair and went back to the hospital. So she did really, really well afterwards, but still had some issues here and there. Ended up having severe AI develop afterwards. They had put a graft in initially, and he referred her to a cardiothoracic surgeon at Yale, Dr. John Aleftieris. I don't know if you know him or not, Dr. John. He recently retired, but he took her on and took her in. Actually went a year for a redo of the graft, and they put a mechanical valve in as well. And she's done outstanding since. Again, that would have been 2000, and when I graduated med school, 2010. So, I mean, here we are 16 years later, and she's still around and kicking and doing well. But no,
she's lucky to be alive. Lucky to be alive.
Very, very lucky. But no, it's not a whole lot of people that I think aortic dissection is something very underappreciated. I know you guys did an episode on it recently, but I thought it was really,
so your mom
really
lost,
interesting that both were moms. What's that?
Your mom lost her mom that day. Is it that was
Correct.
your mom
That day? That day. So after that, in the ensuing, they screened all kind of first degree relatives. She didn't come back with any kind of, she didn't have Marfan's or any connective tissue disorders. Nothing, everything came back negative. They did genetic testing stuff at Yale. Everything came back negative. But my aunt, her sister, was found to have an enlarged aortic root, and they ultimately did a kind of preemptive surgery repair on her.
Oh, good.
So,
wow. That's a great story.
Do they think that the catalyst might have been the high blood pressure with the stress with her mom?
Yes. The exact words from the surgeon was that she's off the bell curve, that everything is just kind of speculative. But that maybe just right time, right place as far as intrathoracic pressure change with crying and that sort of thing. But around that time, I spent a whole bunch of time, many nights in the ICU waiting room and that sort of thing. When my mom was in the hospital, well, you don't get to pick your schedule for intern year. I know Dr. John can appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, and especially back in those days, you did what they told you to do, and that was it. So the first rotation that I was assigned, with nobody knowing anything, was cardiology. And one of my attendings that month, we had 1 half the month, the other half was Dr. Winscott, that you mentioned before, that I'm still very close with. It's a friend of yours. And then in intern year, they give you 3 weeks of vacation. You don't get to pick those weeks. They tell you when they are. So it just so happened that the first week of vacation they gave me was in September of that year. It was the Monday they set my mom's surgery for at Yale. Again, with no coordination. I mean, how things are just meant to be.
Yeah, things happen for a reason.
They do.
Great story.
But you ended up falling in love with interventional cardiology.
I did. So yeah, I know. Again, cardiology was one of the things that I had been, I guess, exposed to there, and then starting on that rotation, one thing kind of went to another. But starting internal medicine, I had no idea I wanted to be a cardiologist, and then it just kind of went from there. And I certainly wanted to do everything I could to make a difference. And that was one of the reasons it was important to me to stay in Mississippi as well. As local was there for me when I needed them, or my family, and I want to be there for them.
When did you develop a foot fetish?
Well, Dr. Winscott. So he was certainly one of my mentors going through. I did residency and cardiology all at the University of Mississippi, where Dr. Winscott is. And so we became very close. He certainly had a strong interest in PAD, and I don't know. I guess I'm a sucker for a challenge. I guess it's one of those things with interventional cardiologists. If people say it can't be done and there's a way you can help, well, then, I'll be your huckleberry.
I love it. I love it.
And one final question, just for all the patients. We know walking is the best medicine for PAD. We have a Go with the Flow series sponsored by Reflow Medical, where you can share a story of someone who walked their way out of CLI, walked their way to better health, or you can give your best walk motivational speech.
Me first?
Yep.
Excellent. So, I certainly tell everybody 30 minutes a day, if there's any way you can do it. It takes 2 weeks to become a habit. So if you can find some way to get that into your routine where you're doing some kind of regular exercise, whether or not that's walking around your house, whether or not if it's an exercise bike or something like that for the patients that may not be quite as mobile or balance issues or that sort of thing. But certainly taking control of that, the more active that you are, the more likely you're going to be to pick up on these kind of symptoms. So if you're doing something on a regular basis and you notice this week that you can't do what you were doing last week, could certainly be an indication that something may be going on. So again, that's my biggest ploy for doing everything you can to ensure that you're staying on top of yourself. I mean, you only have one life, you only have one body, so do your best to take care of it.
So speaking of walking, the Great Circulation Challenge begins on September 1st, where folks across the globe are going to be walking the human superhighway, the 60,000 miles of vessels that your blood flows through in every which direction. We're going to follow a drop of blood with every step we take. And everyone can go to the greatcirculationchallenge.org and join. It's free. You can create a team. John, what's the name of your team?
Save My Piggies.
And ours is PAD Support Group, and Douglas has the Bucky's Wanderers. And I think our friend Hines, who's on here, is going to start the Colorado Rockies, right, Hines?
I already put it in yesterday. I still don't see it out there. Rocky Mountain Walkers.
Okay, I will take a look for that. So how about we challenge Dr. Bennett? We need a Mississippi team for the walkers for the Great Circulation Challenge, 60,000 miles over 30 days, but all of us doing it together to raise awareness for PAD and other circulation issues.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks everyone for joining us.
Guys.
We really appreciate you.
Thanks, Brett. We'll see you around.
Thank you for your time, Dr. Bennett. Have a great weekend, everyone. Don't forget, if you're on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to our channel.